is to describe it as a constant flow of sensory experience, hearing, seeing, feeling, just this constant movement, this constant arising and dissolving of our hearing, seeing, feeling, and thinking. And one metaphor that I've heard described for consciousness itself, the vast awareness of unlimited being, unbounded, timeless being, is to imagine consciousness as a vast river. And the water is the stuff of consciousness. So in this metaphor, we can imagine, ripples or currents in the river, swiftly moving and downstream, and coalescing at certain places into whirlpools. The whirlpool is sort of like a localization of the river, kind of like a cloud is a localization of the sky. So the human personality, if we use this metaphor, it's kind of a whirl or kind of, a movement in concentric circles is one way of envisioning it, arising in the mind. Our mind gives birth to the idea or the sense, deep felt sense, of a human personality that can control and dominate our consciousness, our life. Separate, imagining that we're some kind of separate being made of matter in some sense that can control our life. And we spend endless amounts of energy securing that idea we have of ourself as a separate self. So in the river metaphor, in the whirlpool metaphor, the individual whirlpools can be our ego or our sense of being a separate body-mind. And so our minds are kind of a localization of consciousness in that same way. But each whirlpool is made of the same river. Like our minds are made of awareness itself. So just like each whirlpool is made of the same river, each whirlpool of consciousness that we think of as ourself is made of this same awareness. So no, whirlpool separates or divides the river in any way, and no experience, sensory experience or experience of being a separate being actually divides the awareness, the consciousness that we are. And each whirlpool, is like slightly different, a different configuration of awareness. Like each, so our minds are all different in many ways. We experience many, many different types, various types of sensory experience. And each moment, each feeling, each thought, each sight or sound alters the whirlpool of our mind in just many, many ways, minuscule ways we often aren't even aware of. And as the currents of the river flow into the whirlpool and enter the whirling movement of the whirlpool itself is slightly altered by the power of the river itself. So these series of ripples flowing down the river encounter our whirlpools, encounter all of our different whirlpools and mingle with the whirlpools and affect each whirlpool. And each whirlpool is affecting other whirlpools. So we're each always affecting each other at every moment in different ways. There's a slight change in the configuration of our minds as a result of the conversations we engage in. And all of our whirlpools, all of our minds are affecting each other all of the time in many ways. So in this analogy, death would be the dispersal of the whirlpool, where the whirlpool loses its solidity and stability, and the energies flow out and mingle with the river at large, like our finite awareness loses its solidity and merges with the cosmic river of consciousness. But the whirlpool doesn't just vanish. It gradually unwinds, and as it unwinds, it sends ripples out into the river long after it's vanished. And long after it's vanished, the residues of the energies that sustained it are still present, flowing in the river. And those energies may gather again downstream and coalesce into another whirlpool that will grow into a big whirlpool. And that whirlpool will contain some of the residues of the previous whirlpool. And that's in combination, with all the different ripples from all different whirlpools, or just from the river itself. So that's one theory that we can, hypothesize, or one metaphor, as well as a theory of reincarnation and consciousness being transferred from one body-mind to another. So also within a single lifetime, everything that happens in the whirlpool affects the whirlpool, as well as sending out its energies into the bigger river, affecting the other whirlpools in the river. So every thought we have slightly reconfigures our whirlpool of flowing awareness, affecting our body and mind. Every thought, every impulse leaves a trace, which affects the body. Every feeling has an effect on body and on mind, because both body and mind are one, not separate. The body-mind organism is one whole. What we think and feel in this lifetime has an effect in this lifetime, and also has an effect in the future offspring that our whirlpools have. In this analogy, it's easier to visualize, at least for me anyway, to realize that the power of the flow of the river itself is the power that forms the whirlpools in it, inside it. Before a new whirlpool forms, different currents, ripples, being powered by the river's energy, start to move together and start forming swirling water into a new whirlpool. There is no separate power in the whirlpool itself that can form that whirl of energy into the shape of a whirlpool. The power of the river takes the shape of the flowing and coalescing into a whirlpool. Applied to the river of our flowing awareness, it is awareness itself that takes the form of our experience. While we imagine that we as separate selves made of some kind of matter can control and dominate our experience and the world that we imagine to be outside. So I repeated that last phrase there because I think in some ways these metaphors, many teachers like Jesus started talking in terms of metaphors and parables to kind of bypass our tendency to get lost in abstract thinking and to actually visualize, to more deeply enter into our experience, our direct experience of our life, using more of our senses than just our abstract thinking ability. So we can actually begin to get a feel of how empowered we are, but how the separate self sense is powerless. And more deeply we explore this experience of being who and what we are, the more we realize the power of surrender and the power of deep embodiment that we begin to really deeply feel and to live with. So our thinking mind is a wonderful tool that we can aid each other with in helping each other to more deeply pay attention to our direct experience. Relate to these higher energies, these higher powers that are much, much stronger than any of our human power that gets diluted and weakened when we try to control it, when we try to own it.